The sunlight stabbing through the car window was dizzying. The smell of expensive air freshener and leather seats was a dense, suffocating web, wrapping me in its grasp. I was reborn. Here, in this luxury van on the way to a private hospital. I was back on my 24th birthday. The anniversary of my death. Naomi, don't be nervous. It's just a full body checkup. It's our family's hospital. All the doctors are our people. My stepmother, Linda, sat across from me, holding my hand. Her voice was so gentle it could practically drip, but the greed and cunning in her eyes flickered past like a viper's tongue. Our people. Right. Our people, ready to turn on their own. Ready to cut open my chest without anesthesia and harvest my heart, my liver and my kidneys. Ready to grind up my remains and flush them down the drain, erasing any trace that a person named Naomi Sue had ever existed. What are you so scared of, sis? Mom arranged the best VIP wellness package in the whole hospital for you. Look at my wristband. Sitting next to me, my stepsister, Jessica, flaunted the solid gold band on her wrist, inlaid with crushed diamonds. Only distinguished guests like me get one of these. Yours is just plain silver, isn't it? I lowered my gaze to the simple, unadorned silver band on my own wrist, laughing coldly inside. In my last life, I had looked at Jessica's gold band with the same envy. Linda had told me that gold represented prestige, reserved for the hospital's most elite clients. Silver, she said, was for the heir's confirmation process, which was just different. And I believed her. Like a fool, I wore my silver band, envying Jessica's special treatment, and was led into the hell they called the heir's observation suite. Meanwhile, Jessica took the black card Linda gave her, and went on a shopping spree at the luxury boutiques downstairs for the entire afternoon. How ridiculous. In their eyes, a human life was worth an afternoon of retail therapy. Jessica, stop it, Linda said, patting her daughter's hand in a mock reprimand. Your sister isn't well. This checkup is very important. It determines whether she can successfully inherit the shares your aunt left her. You're not to cause any trouble. She then turned to me, her eyes holding an unmistakable urgency and warning. Naomi, you'll listen to the doctors, understand? For the sake of everything your mother built, you have to make us proud. My mother's legacy? Linda, what right do you have to even mention my mother? My mother founded the Sue Corporation from nothing, but she worked herself into an early grave. Before her body was even cold, you, her most trusted best friend, moved right in with your daughter, climbing into my father's bed. You took over my mother's house, spent my mother's money, and now you want to use my life to secure the last, most crucial 30% of her shares. In my last life, after I died, Jessica became the sole daughter of the Sue family, and rightfully inherited everything. My father, Robert Sue, along with Linda and the hospital director, carved up the massive fortune my life had bought them. While they were popping champagne to celebrate, my blood probably hadn't even been wiped from the crevices of the operating table. At the thought, the hatred in my chest threatened to erupt. My nails dug deep into my palms, the sharp pain instantly clearing my head. I can't be rash. Revenge must be precise. Cruel. I will make them taste what it's like to be cast from heaven into hell, to be slaughtered like livestock. I lifted my head, forcing a pale, fragile smile onto my face, my voice trembling slightly. I understand, Linda. It's just Jessica's wristband is so pretty. The gold is so much nicer than mine. I deliberately showed a mix of admiration and a flicker of jealousy. Jessica immediately puffed up like a peacock whose tail had been stepped on, her chin rising even higher. Of course it is. This is a symbol of status. A sick little thing like you should be wearing silver. A flash of satisfaction crossed Linda's face. She loved seeing me like this, weak and pathetic. It made me easier to control. All right, we're all family. No need to draw lines, she said, patting my head lovingly. Her cold fingers felt slick, like a snake, and a wave of nausea washed over me. We're almost there. Get ready. The car glided to a smooth stop at the VIP entrance of St. Jude's Elite Hospital. Sunlight poured through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, making the lobby glitter with gold. Yet it couldn't penetrate the filth and sin hidden within. I looked out the window at the familiar scene, Watching Jessica eagerly smooth out her designer dress and Linda's face flush with barely contained excitement. My heart was a block of ice. Welcome, Jessica, to the death hunt I've so carefully prepared for you, disguised as a VIP checkup. This boomerang is about to fly right back at you. The hospital director, Dr. Holden, a man who looked refined and scholarly in his gold-rimmed glasses but was in reality worse than an animal, was already waiting at the entrance. He was my stepmother's longtime lover, and the butcher who had personally wielded the scalpel in my last life. Linda. Robert didn't come. Dr. Holden greeted her, casually wrapping an arm around her waist, but his eyes were on me. They swept over my body with a greedy glint, as if appraising merchandise about to be sold. He's busy at the office. I can handle little things like this, Linda cooed, pushing him away with a flirtatious glance. I brought you the girl. Same blood type. I guarantee she's the prime specimen you wanted. Their voices were low, but I was close enough to hear every word. A prime specimen. So that's what I was to them. A living heart, a pair of healthy kidneys. In their eyes, nothing more than a commodity to be traded. Jessica pouted impatiently nearby. She had no interest in the dealings of adults, only in her own privileges. Dr. Holden, where's my VIP lounge? Does it have the latest imported snacks and video games? Of course. Only the best for our Jessica, Dr. Holden replied, his face instantly shifting into an adoring, fatherly expression as he doted on her. He took a scanner from a nurse. First, he scanned the gold band on Jessica's wrist. Beep. The screen lit up. VIP client. Jessica XU. Then he turned to my silver band. Beep. The screen displayed. Air. Naomi XU. Everything was exactly the same as last time. All right, information confirmed, Dr. Holden said with a satisfied nod. Jessica, your personal concierge will take you to the lounge. Naomi, you come with me. We'll start with a few basic tests. This was it. My chance. I lowered my head and timidly tugged on Linda's sleeve. Aunt Linda, I whispered. I need to use the restroom first. I'm a little nervous. Linda frowned with impatience but waved a hand. Fine. Quick, don't waste time. I turned and walked toward the restroom. Jessica, bored, followed me in and began fixing her hair in the mirror. I watched her in the reflection, that face, which bore a slight resemblance to my mother's but was filled with arrogance and stupidity. A churning wave of nausea rose in me. The owner of that face wore my clothes, used my identity, and enjoyed everything that should have been mine. I took a deep breath, suppressed my hatred, and spoke in a naive, envious tone, as if sharing a huge secret. Jessica, I just heard a nurse say that the gold wristband not only gets you a better lounge, but also access to a special room. What room? Jessica, predictably, took the bait and turned around immediately. I think it was called the Gene Experience Lab. It's full of handsome doctors just back from overseas. They give you one-on-one service and even limited edition skincare samples. As I spoke, I watched her expression. Just as I'd expected, her eyes lit up. For a shallow fool like Jessica, words like limited edition, one-on-one, and handsome were fatally attractive. Are you serious? She asked, looking at me suspiciously. Why would I lie to you? I pouted, feigning grievance. It's a shame my silver band only gets me into those cold, boring exam rooms. Oh well, I'm just the heir. Not as distinguished as a VIP client like you, Jessica. My words hit Jessica's sore spot perfectly. She reveled in the feeling of superiority she got from lording it over me. Humph. At least you know your place, she sniffed, her vanity soaring. An evil, idiotic idea formed in her mind. She grabbed my arm, her face set in a commanding expression. Let's switch. I'm in a good mood today. I'll let you experience what it's like to be a VIP. Give me your silver band. You can have the gold one. Oh, but I don't think that's a good idea. Linda will be mad at me, I said, pretending to struggle in a panic. The more I resisted, the more certain she became that this was a brilliant decision. What's not a good idea? I'm the one who says so. Hurry up, she said, roughly trying to pull the silver band from my wrist. In that instant, as she yanked on my arm and our bodies pressed together, shielded from the mirror's view by the vanity counter, I moved with a speed that was almost invisible. I pressed the electronic ID chip I had hidden in my fingertips over the sensor area of her gold band. I had spent all night replicating this chip, based on my memory of the last time, using a micro engraver my mother had left me. Its surface looked identical to the silver band's chip, but I had programmed it with my identity, Naomi Sue. And the real silver band on my wrist? In the struggle, I had used the same technique to affix Jessica's gold chip to it. On the surface, we had only swapped the colors of our wristbands. But in reality, we had swapped our fates. Here, Jessica finally snatched my silver band, putting it on her own wrist with a triumphant grin. She then tossed the gleaming golden death sentence at me. "Put it on, you hick. Don't embarrass me." Trembling, I took the gold band and fastened it to my wrist. I kept my head down, my shoulders shaking slightly, as if I were afraid or crying in defeat. Seeing me like this, Jessica let out a satisfied snort and strutted out of the room. The crisp clicks of her high heels sounded like a metronome beating out a rhythm on the path to hell. I raised my head and looked in the mirror at the tear-streaked face with a cold, cruel smile spreading across its lips. "Enjoy the road to the VIP room, Jessica." Wearing the gold band, I was escorted by a concierge to what was supposed to be Jessica's VIP lounge. The room was spacious, with a soft sofa, huge floor-to-ceiling windows, and a fridge stocked with imported snacks and drinks. In my last life, Jessica had sat right here, eating potato chips while she waited for the news of my death. I didn't touch anything. I just walked to the window and stared blankly at the garden below. Before long, a text from Linda came through, laced with impatience. "Naomi, has the checkup started? Don't try anything funny. Just be good and listen." I looked at the message, a mocking smile on my lips. She couldn't even be bothered to come check on me herself. In her eyes, I was just a piece of merchandise. All that mattered was that the goods were delivered to the shelf intact. I replied, "Aunt Linda, I traded for Jessica's VIP room. It's really nice here. She said she wanted to experience the heir's checkup for me. She's already gone in." I deliberately kept my wording vague, like an ignorant child tattling. The message was sent. Linda was silent for a few seconds, then replied, "Nonsense. Your sister is just being playful. Don't take it seriously. You stay right where you are and wait for instructions." She didn't take it seriously at all. In her mind, even if Jessica was being mischievous and went to the exam room, Dr. Holden would recognize her. He would never make a mistake. She was too confident. Arrogantly so. She didn't know that this entire transaction was conducted in the shadows. To ensure secrecy, Dr. Holden had hired all the medical staff for today's procedure from outside agencies. They didn't know us. Their only means of identification was the electronic wristband. I ignored Linda and opened a countdown app on my phone. I had set the timer based on my memory of the last time, from entering the operating room, to anesthesia, to incision, to cardiac arrest. I remembered every step, every minute, with perfect clarity. Time ticked by second. I could imagine Jessica, in that cold operating room, still gloating over her special treatment. Until they placed the oxygen mask on her face, and she smelled the sweet, deadly anesthetic. She would slowly lose consciousness, and then completely unaware, her chest would be sliced open. And Linda? I opened a microsurveillance app. This was the feed from the listening device and camera I had secretly planted in her bag. She was lounging in Dr. Holden's office, sipping expensive red tea, while scrolling through the latest jewelry collections on her phone. "Darling," Linda's voice purred, "when will the money come through? I have my eye on a Cartier necklace." Dr. Holden's face appeared in the frame. He hugged her from behind, kissing her neck. "Don't worry. The buyer already paid the deposit. The rest comes the moment we confirm the goods are fine. Forget a necklace, I'll buy you a private island." "Oh, stop," Linda laughed, pushing him away. "What about Robert?" "You don't need to worry about him," Dr. Holden said, his eyes turning cold. "Once Naomi is dead and the shares are in Jessica's hands, he'll be putty in your hands. Once we have the company, we kick him to the curb, and the two of us can live happily ever after." "Oh, darling, you're the best." The two of them acted out a nauseating scene in the office, fantasizing about how they would divide the assets and live a life of luxury after my entire family was dead. I closed the feed, my face expressionless. Watching them for another second would have dirted my eyes. I went to the fridge, took out a bottle of ice-cold water, and chugged it down. The cold liquid slid down my throat, but couldn't extinguish the fire raging in my heart. Time was up. The countdown on my phone hit 0. At almost the exact same moment, my phone vibrated. It was an anonymous text with just 2 words. "It's done." The message was from the private investigator I had hired at great expense. He was outside the operating room's observation window right now, witnessing this historic moment for me. I stood up, straightened my clothes, and put on my timid, anxious expression again before walking out of the lounge. As I reached the hallway, I saw Dr. Holden striding quickly from the direction of the operating room. His face showed a hint of post-surgical fatigue, but it was overshadowed by an irrepressible excitement and greed. He saw me and paused, then gave me a kind smile. "Naomi, your sister's checkup went very smoothly. You don't have to worry." Then he walked past me, heading straight for the director's office, and gave Linda, who was waiting inside, a distant okay sign. I saw the office door open and a smile of relief and satisfaction bloom on Linda's heavily made-up face. I lowered my head to hide the bone-chilling smile in my eyes. "Yes, very smoothly. So smoothly that you've just personally sent your own daughter, your lover's cash cow, to her grave. The show is about to begin." Dr. Holden and Linda walked out of the office side by side, both of them beaming with success. "Naomi, what are you standing here for? Come on, I'll take you to see what a completed checkup looks like. A little educational experience for you," Linda said, her mood so good she even had time to taunt me. She thought I'd be scared out of my wits. She wanted to savor my expression of terror and collapse. In my last life, she had done the same thing. She took me to the morgue, pointed at a mangled pile of flesh and blood, and said with a smile, "See? This is what happens when you don't listen." That scene became my eternal nightmare. But this time, looking at her face flushed with excitement, I felt no fear. Only the cold satisfaction of imminent revenge. I nodded obediently and followed behind them like a lamb being led to the slaughter. We walked down a long corridor to a room labeled Medical Waste Disposal. It was colder here than in the rest of the hospital, the air thick with the faint, mixed smell of disinfectant and blood. "Honey, is it all cleaned up? No loose ends, right?" Linda asked in a low voice, a trace of nervousness in her tone. "Relax. You don't trust my work?" Dr. Holden patted his chest confidently. "I guarantee it's flawless. Not a trace." He pushed open the heavy metal door. The room was dimly lit. In the center was a gurney covered with a white sheet. "Go on, take a look. This is our beautiful future," Dr. Holden said with a smile, gesturing for Linda to proceed. Linda took a deep breath, her face a mask of morbid excitement and cruelty. She imagined my terrified, desperate face under the sheet. She stepped forward and, without hesitation, ripped the white sheet away. Time seemed to freeze. The smile on Linda's face solidified, then shattered inch by inch. Her eyes widened, her pupils contracting into pinpricks of pure, unadulterated horror and disbelief. Lying on the gurney wasn't me. The face was as pale as paper, the eyes shut tight. Though lifeless from blood loss, the familiar features, the face that had been whining and showing off to her just a short while ago, was unmistakably that of her own daughter, Jessica. What sent her spiraling into absolute terror was the long, gruesome line of sutures running down Jessica's chest, like a monstrous centipede crawling across her once youthful skin. And on Jessica's wrist was the expensive diamond necklace Linda had just given her, the one Jessica had wrapped around her wrist that morning to match her outfit. No, a strangled, inhuman whimper escaped Linda's throat. She reached out a trembling hand, as if to touch that cold face, but then recoiled as if shoved by an invisible force, stumbling back a step. "No, this isn't real. That's not Jessica," she muttered, her eyes vacant, shaking her head as if she'd gone mad. Dr. Holden was completely stunned. The smugness and greed on his face were instantly replaced by shock and panic. He rushed to the gurney and scrutinized the face. When he confirmed that it was indeed Jessica, his legs gave out, and he nearly collapsed. How could it be her? The wristband was right," he stammered, looking at me in terror. I stood in the shadows of the room, my face devoid of all expression, just watching them. My silence and composure were, in that moment, utterly bizarre and terrifying. "Aya!" A shriek so piercing it could have split the sky erupted from Linda's throat. The sound was filled with despair, pain, regret, and a complete breakdown. She threw herself onto the gurney like a madwoman, clutching Jessica's cold body and wailing. "Jessica! My Jessica! How could it be you? Who did this? Who killed you?" She snapped her head up, her bloodshot eyes red from crying and terror, fixing on me like poison-tipped daggers. "It was you, Naomi. You little bitch. You killed my daughter," she screamed, lunging at me like a frenzied animal, claws outstretched. I didn't move. I just watched her coldly. A split second before her nails could scratch my face, Dr. Holden grabbed her from behind, holding her in a death grip. "Linda, calm down. It wasn't her. It couldn't have been her," he shouted in terror. He knew better than anyone that if this got out, they were all finished. But Linda was beyond reason. She was completely unhinged. And I slowly raised my phone. The screen showed a call to 911 in progress. I pressed the speakerphone button. The calm, professional voice of an operator came through. 911, what's your emergency?" I looked at the pathetic couple before me, driven mad by their own greed and stupidity, and spoke into the phone in a naive, innocent, tear-choked voice. "Officer, help! My auntie, I think she killed my sister." The police arrived quickly. When several uniformed officers with grim expressions burst into the gloomy medical waste room, they were met with a scene of utter chaos and strangeness. Linda, like a madwoman, was still struggling violently in Dr. Holden's arms, letting out incoherent shrieks and curses, all directed at me as I cowered in the corner. Dr. Holden was pale and sweating profusely, trying to both restrain the hysterical Linda and form a coherent sentence to explain to the police that this was all just a misunderstanding. And on the gurney, the sheet-covered body of Jessica served as the silent, ironic centerpiece of the whole farce. "Officers, it's a misunderstanding, all a misunderstanding," Dr. Holden said, his voice a mix of relief at seeing them and terror of his impending doom. "This is just a little internal hospital accident." Accident. The lead officer, an experienced veteran with sharp, perceptive eyes, scanned the scene. His gaze lingered for a few seconds on the gruesome suture on Jessica's chest before landing on me. His tone softened. "Young lady, you're the one who called? You said your aunt killed your sister?" I squeezed out a few timely tears, my body trembling like a leaf in an autumn wind. My voice was filled with fear and anguish. I don't know. I just know my auntie and Dr. Holden brought me here, and said my sister would take my place for the checkup. And then my sister was lying here." As I spoke, I pointed a trembling finger at the gurney. My words were loaded, every one of them a carefully placed breadcrumb. "Your sister took your place for the checkup?" The old officer immediately seized on the key point, his eyes narrowing. "Why would she take your place?" I don't know." I cried even harder. "My auntie said this checkup was very important for the inheritance my mom left me. But my sister, she seemed to want it too." I trailed off, as if too scared to continue, covering my mouth and letting out muffled sobs. But it was enough. The officers were sharp. They immediately pieced together a dramatic conspiracy of a wealthy family fighting over an inheritance, a classic, swapping the prince for a wildcat scheme. The image of a wicked stepmother, so desperate to secure the inheritance that she had her own daughter impersonate her stepdaughter for some special checkup, only for it to go horribly wrong, was vividly painted in their minds. "You're lying." Dr. Holden was practically apoplectic. He never imagined that I, the meek little pushover, would deliver such a fatal blow at the critical moment. "Naomi, don't you dare slander us. It was you and Jessica who swapped wristbands on your own." "Swapped wristbands?" The officer's gaze shifted to him. "What kind of wristbands?" Dr. Holden was speechless. He couldn't possibly explain what the wristbands were for. Was he going to tell the police that the gold band was a ticket for live organ harvesting? That would be a confession. He stammered for a moment, unable to come up with anything. At that moment, Linda, who had been on the verge of a complete mental collapse, seemed to grasp at a final straw. With all her strength, she broke free from Dr. Holden, pointed at me, and shrieked in a voice dripping with venom, It was her. It was her. Officers, don't believe her. She's the one who plotted to kill my daughter. She wanted revenge. She's wanted us dead for a long time. A mentally unstable woman making what sounded like paranoid accusations versus a seemingly pitiable, terrified victim. Anyone would choose to believe the latter. The lead officer gestured to his colleagues, and 2 officers immediately moved to restrain the hysterical Linda. Ma'am, please calm down. Let go of me. Arrest her. Arrest that little bitch. Linda continued to scream wildly. I watched her disgraceful display, without a flicker of emotion. Linda, in my last life, you pointed at my unidentifiable remains and told everyone that I had run off with some man and my promiscuity had led to my downfall. You poured all the filth onto me, ensuring my name was cursed even in death. This time, I'm just returning the favor. I'm giving back to you everything you did to me, exactly as you did it. Officer, I sobbed, pulling a crumpled piece of paper from my pocket. It was a copy of an insurance policy. My auntie just bought a huge accidental death policy for my sister a few days ago. The beneficiary is herself. I thought it was strange buying insurance right before a checkup. I'm so scared. This policy was something my PI had dug up. Linda's greed was constantly handing me weapons. Insurance fraud? The lead officer took the copy, his face turning grim. If he had only been suspicious before, this insurance policy practically cemented Linda's motive for murder. Sacrificing her own daughter for an insurance payout? It was monstrous. No, that's not. Dr. Holden was in a full-blown panic. He never imagined things would spiral this far. He desperately tried to distance himself. This was all Linda's idea. I knew nothing about it. I'm just a doctor. Oh, the officer sneered, pointing at Jessica's chest. Then maybe you can explain why a normal checkup requires cutting a giant hole in someone's chest? Is there something missing from inside? Do I need to call the medical examiner to tell you? The blood drained from Dr. Holden's face. He knew it was over. The hunting game, driven by greed, had finally turned them into the ones trapped in the cage. My so-called father, Robert Sue, arrived an hour later. He had a retinue of company PR people and lawyers with him, looking like he was preparing for war. He burst into the police cordon room, but the first thing he saw wasn't Jessica lying on the gurney, nor was it the catatonic Linda handcuffed to a chair. It was the swarm of reporters with their cameras and microphones who had flocked to the scene. No pictures. Delete all of that. If anyone dares publish a single photo, I'll make sure you regret it. Robert's face showed no sadness, only the fury of having his dirty laundry aired in public. He shoved past a few reporters and stormed up to Dr. Holden, hissing through clenched teeth. What happened? You couldn't even handle this one little thing? What do we do now? The company's stock is going to tank tomorrow. In his eyes, his daughter's life and Linda's crime were less important than the company's stock price. This was my father, a man who had married into my mother's wealth and, after her death, treated her legacy as his private property and his own daughter as a burden. A complete and utter social climber. His cold, selfish demeanor didn't escape me. I quietly turned on my phone's live stream function and aimed the camera at him. The stream wasn't public. The audience consisted of only a few dozen people. The board members and senior executives of the Sioux Corporation, and a few elders from our family clan. In my last life, these were the people who had listened to Robert's one-sided story after my death and easily transferred the shares to Jessica. This time, I wanted them to see for themselves exactly what kind of man they had chosen to support. Robert, save me. Save our daughter. Linda shrieked, crawling toward him as if he were her savior. Robert sidestepped her with disgust, his eyes full of contempt. You useless, bungling idiot. Now you're crying? What were you thinking before? He turned to the lead officer, his face instantly transforming into a fawning smile. Officer, this is all a misunderstanding. A family dispute. My wife, she has some mental health issues. We can resolve this privately. Let's not tarnish our company's reputation. Resolve it privately? The officer snorted. Mr. Sue, this is not a family dispute. This is a heinous criminal case. Your wife is suspected of aggravated assault, possibly even murder. As her husband, I suggest you think very carefully before you speak. Robert's smile froze on his face. Just then Linda, as if remembering something, broke free and pointed at me, screaming at Robert. Robert, don't let her fool you. It was her. That little bitch is the one who harmed Jessica. Tell the police, she's the one who swapped the wristbands. Robert froze. His calculating eyes swept over me. I timed it perfectly, lowering my head to reveal the gleaming gold VIP band on my wrist. At the same time, I looked at him with an expression of extreme hurt and fear and softly called out, Dad. That single word made Robert flinch. Not because he felt any pity for me, but because his mind was rapidly weighing the pros and cons. An insane wife accused of murder versus an innocent-looking daughter who held the keys to the inheritance. The choice was almost too easy for him. Besides, if he admitted there was an internal problem, the hospital's illegal organ trafficking ring might be exposed. As an investor, he wouldn't escape responsibility. But if he blamed everything on Linda's mental instability and the accidental death of her daughter, it would become a self-contained family tragedy. Humiliating, yes, but it would minimize the damage to the company. In a flash, Robert had made his decision. He took a deep breath, his face contorting into an expression of profound grief. He walked up to Linda and slapped her hard across the face. The sound was crisp and loud, stunning everyone into silence. You crazy woman. What nonsense are you spouting? Robert pointed a finger at Linda's nose and roared with anguish. Naomi is so well behaved. How could she possibly harm Jessica? I think you've really lost your mind. Officers, I can attest that my wife has severe postpartum depression and paranoia. Everything she's done is a figment of her imagination. It has nothing to do with my daughter, Naomi. A brilliant move. Sacrificing the queen to save the king. What a cold-blooded man. Linda was stunned by the slap. She stared in disbelief at the man who had professed his love for her, who had just been plotting their future together, and who had now so easily thrown her into the abyss. Robert, you. Her lips trembled, unable to form words. And on my live stream, I watched the comments from the board members and elders fly across the screen. Monster. Unbelievable. I slowly curved my lips into a smile. Robert, you think you've won? You just hammered the first nail into your own coffin. Robert's public disavowal of his wife instantly turned the tide. The story of a mentally unstable stepmother, so jealous of her stepdaughter's inheritance that she tried to pull a switcheroo and accidentally killed her own daughter, was a perfect, self-contained, sordid tale. It neatly replaced the horrifying truth of a corporate-funded organ harvesting ring. The former was a family tragedy, the latter was a corporate crime. Robert chose to use Linda's madness to cover up the evil of a whole group of people. Linda was completely crushed by Robert's betrayal. She stopped screaming and just sat there, her eyes empty, muttering over and over, "You lied to me, you all lied to me." When the police came to take my statement, I recited my prepared story in the most innocent, pitiable way possible. I really don't know what happened," I said between sobs. "My sister, she never liked me. She always said I stole her things. When we got to the hospital today, she saw my silver wristband and insisted it was better than hers and forced me to switch." I pulled up my sleeve, revealing several clear scratch marks on my arm. They were from when Jessica had grabbed my wristband in the restroom. I hadn't fought back precisely, so I could have this damning evidence. I couldn't say no to her, so I had to trade. I thought it was just a childish tantrum. I never thought it would end like this. I cried, covering my face, my voice choked with grief. "Dad, Jessica was always trying to take my things. She even tried to steal my fiancé. I thought letting her have her way would keep the peace. I never thought she'd end up taking her own life." My words were a masterful blend of truth and lies, each one a dagger to the heart. It not only perfectly explained the wristband swap, placing all the blame on Jessica's greed and arrogance, but it also casually dropped the fact that Jessica had gone after my fiancé, further cementing her poor character. A greedy, entitled girl who would even steal her sister's fiancé would absolutely try to steal a wristband symbolizing an inheritance out of jealousy and vanity. The logic was flawless. The surrounding police officers and reporters looked at me with immense sympathy, while their gazes toward Robert and Linda filled with contempt and disgust. Mr. Sue, the lead officer said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. It seems you have quite a few problems in your household. Robert's face went from white to red, but he couldn't say a word in rebuttal. What could he say? Deny that Jessica was after my fiancé? Everyone in their social circle knew how close she was to my fiancé Luke. Deny that she stole my things? The heirlooms from my mother that Jessica had claimed as her own back at home were the best proof. He realized that every word I said was irrefutable. I, the daughter he had never once paid attention to, had unknowingly woven a net from which he could not escape. He had no choice but to swallow his pride and nod repeatedly at the police. Yes, it's my fault. I failed as a father. I'm sorry you had to witness this. At this point, the case was more or less settled. Linda, thanks to Robert's proof of her mental illness and her very real breakdown, was temporarily sent to a psychiatric hospital for evaluation. Dr. Holden, as the attending physician, was temporarily cleared of being the mastermind, but couldn't escape responsibility for gross medical malpractice. He was taken into custody for further investigation, and Jessica was declared brain dead. Though her heart was still beating, she was effectively a vegetable, her life sustained only by expensive medical equipment. It was a punishment perhaps crueler than death. As the victim, after giving my statement, I was escorted by Robert through a gauntlet of reporters and into the car home. The atmosphere in the car was terrifyingly oppressive. Robert drove in silence, but his white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel betrayed his extreme inner turmoil. He must have been wondering whether I was truly innocent or a wolf in sheep's clothing. But I didn't care what he thought. Back at the familiar yet alien villa, I went straight upstairs to my room, shut the door, and locked out the suffocating atmosphere from downstairs. I walked to the vanity and looked at the face in the mirror, still streaked with tears, but with eyes as cold as ice. Naomi, don't cry. This is only the first step. None of the people who killed you will get away. Jessica was a vegetable, Linda was in a mental hospital, and Dr. Holden was under investigation. To protect the company and his own reputation, Robert unleashed his powerful PR machine to minimize the scandal's fallout. The media narrative was unified. A wealthy stepmother suffering from mental illness made a fatal error while overseeing a medical procedure for her stepdaughter and biological daughter, tragically leaving her own child in a vegetative state. The police were investigating. In the reports, I was portrayed as an innocent, traumatized, and sympathetic victim. At home, everything related to Linda and Jessica was cleared out overnight, as if they had never lived there. Robert tried to create the illusion that everything was back to normal. His attitude toward me did a complete 180. He was no longer the cold, distant father who ignored me. He became kind and attentive, constantly asking how I was, and even waking up early to make me breakfast. I knew it wasn't a crisis of conscience. He was afraid of me. He was afraid that I, the sole heir, would meet with some accident, and even more afraid that I held more evidence that could be used against him. He wanted to soften me up, to control me, but I wouldn't let him. Late one night, I slipped past the house staff and drove to the psychiatric hospital where Linda was being held. Security was tight, but I had already bribed a nurse. Led by the nurse, I walked down a grim corridor to a private room. Through the small window in the door, I saw Linda. She was wearing a large hospital gown. Her hair was a mess, and she sat staring blankly at the corner of the bed, clutching a pillow. Jessica, my sweet girl, wake up. Mommy will take you to buy new clothes, she kept muttering. She was insane, but not completely. She still remembered her daughter. I had the nurse open the door and walked in. Hearing the noise, Linda slowly looked up. When she saw it was me, her empty eyes were instantly filled with venom and madness. Naomi, you demon! Give me back my daughter, she shrieked, clutching the pillow and lunging at me. Don't get excited, Linda, I said, standing at a safe distance. My voice was as light as the wind, but carried a bone-chilling cold. I just came to see you, and to tell you some good news. She froze, watching me warily. I smiled and spoke slowly. In my last life, I was the one lying on that operating table, my body hollowed out by all of you. It really hurt, you know? A pain that went deep into my bones. But don't worry, Jessica went peacefully. She was cut open by her beloved Dr. Holden in her sleep. What? What are you talking about? Linda's pupils contracted violently, the blood draining from her face. Am I talking nonsense? My smile widened. Why do you think I knew your plan? How could I have prepared everything in advance? It's because I've died once already. You all killed me once. I laid the secret of my rebirth bare before her in the cruelest way possible. I came back to take back everything you owe me, piece by piece. You, Dr. Holden, Jessica, and... I paused, looking at her face, twisted by extreme terror. And Robert. Impossible, you're a demon. You're a ghost. Linda completely broke down. She clutched her head, let out a terrified scream, and huddled in the corner, trembling. Seeing her like this, a sliver of the hatred in my heart finally dissolved. Scared already? Linda, your retribution has only just begun. I turned and left the room, her incoherent sobs and curses echoing behind me. I knew that from this night on, that secret would gnaw at her sanity like a parasite, tormenting her day and night on the edge of lucidity and madness. Meanwhile, it was time for Robert's alliance of interests to crumble. The next day, I anonymously sent a file to several major media outlets and to Dr. Holden's wife. The file contained proof of Linda and Dr. Holden's years-long affair, including photos of them entering hotels together, intimate text messages, and their detailed plan to sideline Robert and seize control of the Sioux Corporation after they had disposed of me. This file was copied from Dr. Holden's secret computer by my PI. It was a bombshell. Dr. Holden's wife was a formidable woman with a powerful family. Upon learning that her husband was not only cheating but also plotting murder and theft, she immediately stormed the hospital and the Sioux Corporation headquarters, exposing their sordid affair to the world. The news, which had been suppressed, exploded back into the headlines, uglier and more sensational than before. Hospital director's affair with patient's mother. Couple conspires to murder heiress, seize company. Every headline was a knife plunging into the reputation of the Sioux Corporation and Robert Sioux. The company's stock plummeted. Robert was overwhelmed. He never imagined that the pawn he had sacrificed would come back to deliver the most fatal blow. His supposedly unbreakable alliance had crumbled with a gentle push from me. The flames of infighting began to rage. The Sioux Corporation was plunged into an unprecedented crisis. The stock price hit its limit down for 3 consecutive days. The board was in a panic, and shareholders were demanding an explanation from Robert. And Robert, my so-called father, was pacing his house like a caged animal. He directed all his anger at me. Was it you? Did you leak that information? He roared, his eyes bloodshot, pointing a finger at my nose. I sat on the sofa, calmly sipping my tea, not even bothering to look up. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a student who has lost her sister and is recovering from a terrible shock. My calm composure enraged him further. Still pretending? He snatched the teacup from my hand and smashed it on the floor. Naomi, I'm telling you, don't think that just because Linda and Jessica are gone, you run this house. As long as I'm the chairman, you will listen to me. He had finally torn off his mask of the loving father, revealing his true face. The company needs a large injection of capital to stabilize the stock price, he said, looking down at me, his tone leaving no room for argument. Take out the 30% of shares your mother left you and mortgage them to the bank. It's your duty as a daughter of the Sioux family. I laughed coldly. The endgame. After all this time, his ultimate goal was still my mother's shares. In my last life, he had used the same excuse to trick me out of my inheritance. This time he wouldn't get a single cent from me. I slowly stood up, walked over to him, and looked directly into his eyes, which were ugly with greed and anger. Dad, have you forgotten what Mom's will said? Robert froze, his eyes flickering. I reminded him. Mom's trust is very clear. I can only take full control of these 30% of shares after I turn 25 or get married. Until then, they are managed by a trust at Sterling Bank. No one, including you, has the right to touch them. So what? Robert bellowed in frustration. I'm your father, your guardian. I have the right to make decisions for you. Do you? I smiled slightly, pulled a sealed manila envelope from the bookshelf behind me, and threw it in front of him. This is a supplementary agreement to Mom's will. It's been with her private lawyer this whole time. I think you'll want to read it now." Suspiciously, Robert ripped open the envelope and pulled out the document. As he read the clauses, his face turned paler than a corpse. The supplementary agreement stated in bold, black letters, "In the event that my only daughter, Naomi Sue, suffers any form of accidental bodily harm or unnatural death before the age of 25, all of my shares in the Sue Corporation and all other assets will be automatically and unconditionally donated to the International Children's Charity Fund. Concurrently, all of my real estate holdings will be immediately auctioned, with the proceeds also being donated. In such an event, my husband, Robert Sue, will not inherit a single penny from my estate. In short, as long as I was alive, Robert could continue to enjoy his life of luxury as the prince consort. The moment something happened to me, he would be thrown back to square one, with nothing. I was his talisman and the sword of Damocles hanging over his head. This is impossible." Robert's hands trembled violently. The document felt like a red-hot iron, burning his hands. "Your mother, how could she guard against me? Is that it?" I finished his sentence for him, my voice cold. "Dad, don't forget who my mother was. She built a business empire from nothing. Did you really think she was some silly woman blinded by love? She loved you, but she never truly trusted you. She saw the selfish, greedy social climber in your bones long ago. That's why she left this final line of defense to protect me." Robert collapsed onto the sofa, his face ashen. His greatest leverage, the trump card he thought he could play at will, had become his unbreakable chains. Not only could he not touch me, but he would also have to worship me like a goddess, praying that I lived a long, healthy life. I walked over to him, looking down at the man who had lost all his fire, my voice cold and powerful. "Do you still think you have the right to order me around?" His lips trembled, but he couldn't utter a word. "From now on, I'm in charge of this house. And it's time the company returned to its rightful owner." I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my mother's most capable assistant and a company veteran, Mr. Davis. "Mr. Davis, it's Naomi Sue. Call an emergency board meeting for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm going to talk to the board members personally about the future direction of the company." On the other end of the line, Mr. Davis's voice was excited and relieved. "Of course, Miss Sue. We've been waiting for you for a long time." After hanging up, I didn't spare Robert another glance. The takeover had officially begun. The atmosphere at the emergency board meeting the next day was so tense it was almost suffocating. All the directors and shareholders were present, sitting around the long conference table, whispering amongst themselves with expressions of concern, doubt, and most of all, curiosity. Robert sat at the head of the table, his face so dark it looked like it could drip ink. He seemed to have aged 10 years overnight, with deep-set eyes and graying temples. When the conference room doors opened, I walked in, dressed in a tasteful black power suit and high heels, accompanied by Mr. Davis. All eyes immediately focused on me. I showed no signs of fear, my face calm and confident. I gave a slight nod to the room and walked straight to the chairman's seat, the one that had belonged to my mother and was later occupied by Robert. "Uncles, gentlemen, good morning. I am Naomi Sue." My voice was clear and strong, echoing in the quiet room. "I know everyone is worried about the company's current situation and has doubts about me," a junior, suddenly stepping forward. I scanned the room, my gaze meeting each person's eyes. "So today, I'm not here to make empty promises. I'm here to solve problems." Robert snorted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Solve problems? What does a little girl like you know? This is the board of directors, not your playground. Get back to your seat." He tried to use his paternal authority to intimidate me, but I just gave him a dismissive glance and ignored him. I took a USB drive from Mr. Davis and plugged it into the conference room's projector. "Before we discuss how to solve the problems, I think we should first see clearly what the problems are." I hit play. The huge projection screen immediately lit up with crystal clear videos and detailed financial reports. The first video showed Robert at a high-end club, schmoozing with several suppliers. Under the table, a thick envelope was slipped into his hand. The second video showed him with a glamorous woman and a 7 or 8-year-old boy, intimately entering a luxury apartment building. The boy called him Daddy. Next came a series of shocking financial records. They showed that during his years as chairman, Robert had used his position to secretly award the company's prime projects to a shell company registered under his mistress's name at extremely low prices, then resold them at a high markup, pocketing the difference. He had also set up numerous secret accounts to funnel this illicit money overseas, the largest of which was used to buy a trust fund for his illegitimate son. The evidence was irrefutable. The entire conference room fell silent, except for the whirring of the projector fan. The directors were stunned. They stared in disbelief at the evidence on the screen, then at Robert, whose face had turned a deep shade of purple. They never imagined that this chairman, who usually seemed so honest and proper, was secretly a parasite who embezzled company funds, kept a mistress, and even had a son that old. You, Robert pointed at me, trembling with rage, unable to speak. He never dreamed that his most hidden secrets would be so thoroughly exposed by me. Gentlemen, I said, turning off the projector and looking calmly at the room. Now do you see why the company is in crisis? Because we have a giant parasite in our midst. He's not just devouring the company's profits, he's destroying the business reputation my mother built from the ground up. The Sioux Corporation does not need a leader who lines his own pockets and is unfit for his position. My words struck a chord with everyone. The board members who still held a shred of loyalty to Robert were now completely disillusioned. Robert, you have to give us an explanation. Shameless. You embezzled public funds to support your mistress. I propose we immediately remove Robert Sioux from his position as chairman and launch an internal investigation. The room erupted in anger. Amidst the accusations, Robert's face turned ashen, and he lost all will to fight back. Just then, the conference room doors opened again. Several officers from the prosecutor's office, accompanied by 2 police officers, walked in. The leader flashed his badge and announced in a loud voice, "Mr. Robert Sioux, we are from the Economic Crimes Investigation Division of the District Attorney's Office. We have received an anonymous tip and suspect you of multiple crimes, including embezzlement, misappropriation of funds, and commercial bribery. Please come with us to assist in the investigation." Cold handcuffs snapped onto Robert's wrists. He didn't even have the strength to struggle. He was led away like a stray dog from the place where he once held absolute power. I stood there, coldly watching him being taken away. This was all, of course, my doing. I wanted him not only to be disgraced but also to pay the legal price for his greed. And Linda, far away in the psychiatric hospital, I didn't let her off the hook either. I made sure someone relayed the news from today's board meeting, including the details about Robert's mistress and illegitimate son. I don't know what her expression was when she heard the news, but I do know that from that day on, she truly and completely lost her mind. She no longer muttered her daughter's name. Instead, she spent her days and nights cursing the man who had deceived her, used her, and ultimately abandoned her. She had gambled her life and her daughter's life on this man, only to find out she was just the dumbest of his many pawns. That realization was more destructive to a person's psyche than any physical torture. The taste of kicking a man when he's down was truly sweet. With Robert and Linda dealt with, only one key figure remained, Dr. Holden. For his role in the gross medical malpractice, his medical license was revoked, and he faced massive civil lawsuits. His powerful wife divorced him immediately and used her family's connections to ensure he was left with nothing, even uncovering and seizing his hidden illicit income. Overnight, Dr. Holden went from a respected hospital director to a disgraced, destitute outcast. But I knew that wasn't enough. His hands were stained with my blood. Merely losing his fame and fortune was not enough to repay that debt. More importantly, he knew too many secrets. He was the one who executed the plan. If he got desperate and revealed the truth about the organ harvesting, it would crush Robert and Linda, but it would also bring a devastating blow to the Sioux Corporation. I had to silence him forever before he had the chance to speak. I had my PI continue to watch him. As expected, the cornered Dr. Holden began selling off his remaining assets and frequently contacted human smugglers, preparing to flee the country. The night before he planned to escape, I sent him a text from a burner phone. "Want to live? West Side Abandoned Pier, 10 p.m. tomorrow. Bring all your evidence. Someone will pick you up." At the end of the message, I included an overseas bank account number and deposited a sum large enough to entice him. I knew that a suspicious man like Dr. Holden wouldn't fully trust me, so I prepared another gift. I anonymously leaked the news of Dr. Holden's escape plan, along with the clue that he held information on the real buyer, to the mysterious client who had paid a fortune for the organs. I knew from my past life that this client was a powerful Southeast Asian triad boss. He had been trying to procure organs for his dying son. But not only did he not get the goods, but the trouble on Dr. Holden's end also brought him unwanted attention from Interpol, causing him massive losses. He was looking for someone to blame. Now I was serving him Dr. Holden, the insider, on a silver platter. I was confident that the triad boss wanted Dr. Holden to disappear forever even more than I did. After setting everything in motion, I stopped paying attention. I just had to wait. 3 days later, a small, unremarkable news brief appeared in the corner of a local paper. A man with the surname Holden had died when his car crashed into the river near the West Side Pier, allegedly due to drunk driving. The police ruled it an accident. The accompanying photo showed a car, mangled beyond recognition, being pulled from the water. I sat in my office, in front of the massive floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bustling city. I gently swirled a glass of crimson burgundy, the liquid leaving beautiful tears on the glass, like blood or the color of death. Dr. Holden was dead, killed in a carefully orchestrated accident. He would never know whose trap he had fallen into. Was it the savior he thought he was meeting, or the buyer he feared? Perhaps both. I drained the wine in my glass. The spicy liquid burned its way down my throat, bringing a wave of heat. The sun shone through the glass onto my skin, but I felt no warmth. I knew that the moment I chose this path of revenge, I had said goodbye to the sun. My world was destined to be one of darkness and cold. But I had no regrets. I looked out the window. An eagle soared across the sky, free and proud. From this day on, no one would ever be able to clip my wings again. With all the obstacles removed, it was time to clean up the mess at the Sioux Corporation. With the support of Mr. Davis and the other company veterans, I used the authority granted by the trust to temporarily take over the company's operations as the largest shareholder. I sold off the bad assets Robert had invested in, decisively cut several loss-making subsidiaries, and reallocated the capital to the core projects my mother had been most optimistic about. I worked over 16 hours a day, meetings, reports, client visits. I displayed a calmness, decisiveness, and ruthlessness far beyond my years, quickly stabilizing the company and silencing the directors who had been watching me with skepticism. They saw my mother's shadow in me, but even more sharp and efficient. A month later, the company's stock price began to rebound. Everything was getting back on track, and I could finally conduct the final reckoning. One afternoon, I finished work early and went to the villa where I had grown up, accompanied by Mr. Davis, 2 corporate lawyers, and 4 imposing bodyguards in black suits. I pushed open the door to a thick stench of smoke and alcohol. The living room was a disaster. Empty bottles, cigarette butts, and takeout containers were strewn everywhere. Robert, wearing a stained bathrobe, was slumped on the sofa, gaunt and unshaven, staring blankly at the financial news on TV. The screen showed me in an interview. The new head of the Sioux Corporation, Naomi Sioux, expresses confidence in leading the group out of its crisis and to new heights. When he saw me, a complex emotion flickered in his cloudy eyes. There was resentment, jealousy, but mostly a powerless fear. He had been released on bail. Due to the massive amount of money involved and the complexity of the case, he was temporarily free, but was forbidden from leaving the country, and was awaiting his trial. During this time, he had watched helplessly as I took control of the company, step by step, and everything he had worked for turned to dust. This torture was worse for him than being in prison. "What are you doing back here?" he croaked, his voice raspy and wary. I didn't answer him. I walked to the center of the living room and surveyed the familiar yet alien space. "Mr. Davis," I said coolly, "this villa is still under my mother's name, correct?" Mr. Davis immediately stepped forward. "Yes, Miss Sioux. This villa was your mother's prenuptial property. Mr. Sioux only has temporary residency rights." I nodded, then turned my gaze to Robert. I looked at him as if he were a complete stranger. "Mr. Sioux, I believe you heard that clearly. This house belongs to my mother. You are merely a guest staying here. Now, as the sole heir to this property, I am officially informing you. I paused, then enunciated each word clear and cold. To take your things and get the hell out of here. Immediately. Get out. The words hit Robert like a sledgehammer. He shot up from the sofa, staring at me in disbelief. What did you say? You're kicking me out? I'm your father. You ungrateful child. He tried to use his authority as a father and the concept of filial piety to crush me, as he had always done. But I was no longer that weak girl who could be bullied. I sneered, not even bothering to argue with him. I simply gave a nod to the bodyguards behind me. Please escort him out. All of his personal belongings are to be packed and thrown outside within half an hour. Go. 2 towering bodyguards, built like tanks, immediately grabbed Robert by the arms. What are you doing? Let go of me. I'm the man of this house. You dare touch me. Robert struggled violently, spewing curses. But his feeble strength was no match for the professional bodyguards. He was unceremoniously dragged toward the front door like a sack of garbage. Naomi, you animal. You'll get what's coming to you. I curse you. His curses were cut off by the heavy slam of the door. I stood in the empty living room, listening to the fading shouts from outside. My heart a barren wasteland. Retribution? Robert, your retribution has only just begun. From this day forward, you will lose everything you ever relied on. Money, status, family, and your pathetic male pride. Kicked out of the villa, Robert didn't give up. He began his final, most pathetic struggle. First, he went to the company building and caused a scene, telling everyone who would listen that I was an ungrateful daughter who had thrown her own father out on the street to seize the family fortune. Then, he contacted various media outlets, crying and lamenting my evil deeds, trying to use public opinion and morality to corner me. For a time, negative news about me was everywhere online. Heiress kicks out father for power. The cold, heartless truth behind the business queen. If it had been the old me, I would have crumbled under the weight of such public condemnation. But now I just found it laughable. I made no public response. I simply had the PR department quietly post a few things on my personal social media account. The first was an old video of my mother and Robert's wedding. In it, Robert wore a cheap, ill-fitting suit, looking awkward and insecure next to my mother. My grandfather's voiceover could be heard, tinged with resignation and a sigh. Robert, our family isn't asking for anything from you. We just hope you'll be good to Naomi's mother. The second was a record of donations. It showed that since their marriage, my mother had donated a significant sum of money every year in Robert's name to his impoverished hometown. It also detailed how his so-called relatives back home had used that money to live extravagantly, with every transaction clearly listed. The third was a collection of my school and medical records from childhood. Every time I was sick in the hospital or had a parent-teacher conference, the signature line for Robert was blank. Instead, it was always my mother, my grandfather, or Mr. Davis. Finally, I added a single sentence. I do not fear judgment, whether legal or moral. But I will not be judged by a man who never once fulfilled his duties as a father, and only ever saw me as an ATM. The moment these were posted, public opinion reversed dramatically. The netizens who had been sympathizing with Robert and cursing me were slapped in the face. OMG, he married into money. A gold-digging leech who plays the victim. Shameless. This guy just screams, kept man. I'm sick. He never once visited his daughter when she was sick, and now he has the nerve to talk about fatherly love? Does he deserve it? Go, Siyosu. Clean house. Why keep a bloodsucker like that around? The online ridicule and condemnation of Robert reached a fever pitch. He had tried to use public opinion as a weapon, only to be drowned by its tide. He became the biggest joke in the city. When Mr. Davis read me some of the online comments, I just calmly continued with my work. This was precisely what I wanted, to utterly shred his pathetic, hypocritical pride and stomp it into the ground. Robert's last lifeline was cut. He was completely desperate. That night, he got roaring drunk and came back to the villa to cause a scene. He cursed me, my mother, and the world that had given him a taste of glory only to plunge him into hell. At the peak of his tirade, he suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed. By the time the ambulance arrived, his face was twisted and he couldn't speak. A stroke. The doctors said it was caused by extreme stress and chronic alcoholism. They saved his life, but the right side of his body was completely paralyzed, and his speech was severely impaired. Mr. Davis asked me what to do. I stood in the hospital corridor, looking through the glass at the man lying in the hospital bed like a pile of sludge, only able to make guttural noises. I felt nothing. Send him to the best private nursing home, I instructed calmly. Get the best caregivers, use the best medicine. Make sure he's well fed and his vital signs are stable. Mr. Davis looked at me, puzzled. I turned and looked at the setting sun outside the window. After all, I said softly, I want him to live a long, long life. To live, and to watch with clear eyes as I lead the Sioux Corporation to new heights. To live, and to taste the bitter fruit he planted, in endless regret and under the ridicule of others. For a man like him, that is the cruelest and most just punishment. Time is the best healer and the most ruthless carver. 6 months passed. The city had new gossip and new scandals. The once sensational Sioux family drama gradually faded from memory, only occasionally mentioned in hushed tones over drinks. But for the people in the story, Destiny's judgment had only just begun. Linda, thanks to a confirmed psychiatric diagnosis, escaped legal punishment, but not the prison of her own mind. She was permanently confined to that mental hospital. I would occasionally receive reports on her condition from the nurse. They said she had completely lost it. Sometimes she would cradle a pillow, singing to Jessica, and telling her stories. Other times she would scream vicious curses at the walls, damning Robert, Dr. Holden, and me. She lived in a world of her own making, one filled with betrayal and hatred, day after day, with no escape. Jessica, the once vibrant flower of evil, lay like a plant drained of all life, quiet in an ICU bed. After Robert's paralysis, no one was willing to pay her exorbitant medical bills. I didn't stop her treatment, but I only maintained her most basic vital signs. She just lay there, unable to move, unable to speak, perhaps even unable to think. The cold machines were the only proof she was still alive. She would spend her long, senseless remainder of life atoning for her greed and stupidity. As for Robert, I had him placed in the city's most luxurious nursing home. The environment was beautiful, the service impeccable. His meals were fed to him by a personal aide. To outsiders, it looked like I, his daughter, was treating him with the utmost filial piety. But I knew that for a man who valued his pride and dignity more than his own life, this existence, being fed and cared for, yet stripped of all freedom and dignity, completely at the mercy of his caregivers, was a torment worse than death. I visited him once. Through the thick glass, I saw him sitting in a wheelchair, being pushed into the garden by a nurse to get some sun. His head was lolled to one side, drool dribbling from his mouth, his eyes staring blankly at the sky. The once charismatic man who had lorded over me was now a wreck who couldn't even manage his own basic needs. He saw me. A powerful light flared in his cloudy eyes, a mixture of monstrous hatred and boundless fear. He struggled, guttural sounds escaping his throat as he tried to curse me, but only garbled noises came out. I didn't go any closer. I just watched him quietly through the glass for 3 minutes, then turned and left. I wouldn't be back. I put him there not to watch him suffer, but simply to fulfill my legal obligation of care as a daughter to her father. There was nothing left between us. Leaving the nursing home, the sun was bright. I had my driver take me to one last place, the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. My mother was buried here. On her tombstone, her photo showed her smiling gently, a look of wisdom on her face. I placed a bouquet of fresh sunflowers in front of the stone. "Mom, it's all over." I crouched down, wiping a speck of dust from the tombstone with a handkerchief. The people who hurt you, the people who hurt me, they've all gotten what they deserved. I got the company back too, and it's doing better than ever. Don't worry. I'm doing well. I will live a good life, carrying your hopes with me. A breeze rustled the fallen leaves, like my mother's silent reply. I stood up, took one last look at that warm smile, and turned away without hesitation. I didn't cry. I knew the dead were at rest. The living must carry their strength and love forward. The The past was settled. My life was just beginning. After leaving the cemetery, I didn't go home or back to the office. I had the driver take me to the headquarters of my charitable foundation in the city center. I had established it with the first dividend I received after taking back the company. It was named Sunflower. It was dedicated to providing legal, psychological, and financial assistance to women who, like my mother, came from humble beginnings but strived for the light, and to women who, like the old me, were exploited by their families and oppressed by an unjust fate. I walked into the foundation's lobby, and the staff greeted me warmly. "Good afternoon, Ms. Sue." I smiled and nodded in return. Here, there were no corporate backstabbing, no family feuds. Just a group of people working toward a common ideal, and faces full of hope and gratitude. The foundation's director, a capable and efficient woman, updated me on their recent work. "Ms. Sue, last month we successfully helped 3 women escape their abusive husbands and secured startup funds for them to become independent. Also, the girl we sponsored from the mountain region received her acceptance letter from a top university last week. She wrote a thank you letter." She handed me the letter. The paper was plain, but the handwriting was full of strength. "Thank you for showing me that a girl can change her destiny by studying and leaving the mountains. I want to become someone who can help others, just like you." Reading the letter, my eyes grew a little misty. Perhaps this was the most meaningful part of my rebirth, beyond just revenge. I didn't just want to live a beautiful life for myself, I wanted to help more people like me see the light, chase the light, and ultimately, become the light. That evening, I declined all social engagements and returned alone to the vast, empty villa that was now truly mine. I poured myself a glass of red wine, and walked to the enormous floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, the city lights twinkled like a river of stars. I looked at the reflection in the glass. A woman in a simple, chic suit, her long hair tied back, her gaze firm and composed. Her face no longer held the timidity and shadows of the past. In their place was a calm strength, settled after weathering many storms. The face was young, yet it seemed to have already traveled 1,000 miles. I raised my glass to the night sky and to the woman in the reflection. "To a new life," I whispered. From this day on, I was no longer someone's daughter or someone's sister. I was no longer a vengeful ghost living for hatred. I was just Naomi Sue, the head of the Sue Corporation, the founder of the Sunflower Foundation, and the queen of my own life.